One aspect of restoring horse-drawn vehicles is uncovering the craftsmanship that was done over 100 years ago. This wagon was found in Mississippi. It had a lot of age on it, a lot of dirt on it. So part of the challenge was to uncover, if any, what the original striping was. You can see it's starting to show up here. I have a very soft sponge and just water as I'm lightly wiping away the top dirt, trying to reveal the stripe pattern. You can see where the stripe comes to a point right in the center of this bar where the shaft shackles are attached, and it curves around, and we'll just continue to clean and see where it goes. Now as I wipe here gently, you'll notice right here you see a black stripe above the yellow, but as I wipe a couple more times the black disappears. That's just how sensitive some of this old finish is. And slowly we begin to see a pattern begin to emerge. A stripe pattern on the axle also begins to show up. Now since there was a yellow stripe on the top in front, I expected to find one here, but I didn't. Instead, it shows up on the side, along with a heavy black stripe. On the back of the axle, we also see a black stripe that accompanies the yellow. And we begin to see the black and yellow pattern show up here. Nothing shows up on the rear stabilizer bar or on the center of the axle or the fifth wheel bar. Now that we've seen what's on the right side, we begin to anticipate what's on the left. As I go, I learn to become gentler with the sponge. Now, learning what to look for, we can anticipate where some of the stripes are. So this gives us a good idea of the stripe pattern on the front axle. And besides this video, I make sure I photograph everything. So next I'll check the reach, but I didn't find any stripes. There were some, however, on the reach hounds. There was more of the black stripe evident on the right side. Now I'll check the bolsters. There are some stripes evident on the top of the standards. And I found some on the end of the bolsters. Now some lettering on the inside of the rear axle was still very prominent, but something began to show up on the right side. It's not real clear, but this almost looks like a 5 and a 6 and possibly a 2. This could be a 3. This almost looks like the bottom part of an S. As I begin to clean up the lettering, we see there's an original stripe pattern underneath. We'll bring this up closer and you can see where the yellow and black stripe is underneath the brighter yellow stenciling. This stenciling was the name of the seller, not the manufacturer. Now here were some stripes that I missed the first time around because of the rust. But as I began to look closer on all of them, the signs were there. It was even hiding under this heavy rust. Next, we'll work on the back side of the back axle. This hickory is still pretty clear, and we also see the black and gold stripes. And we also see the similar pattern we found on the front axle. Now I'm going to start to trace some of these letters so that I can duplicate them after it's repainted. I'm using tracing paper, And sometimes you can make the tracing paper a little more transparent if it is wet. So what I'm going to show you here is the difference between wetting it down with water, which the paper reacts to, it wrinkles up, it kind of messes with the paper. As compared to using paint thinner. Paint thinner will make it also more transparent, but it doesn't bother the paper like water does. So when you see me wiping this down as I go, you know I'm using paint thinner. So I'm going to position my tracing paper, hold it in place with masking tape, and begin to trace the letters. Using these traced patterns, I'll be able to duplicate all of these after the wagon is painted. By sketching in the stripes, I'll be able to know how to position this when I redo it. This reveals that the yellow stripe is not uniform as it comes up to the notch for the reach. That's just part of being handcrafted. Now I'll trace the name of the seller on the back axle. Now I need to trace the lettering that was on the box. This was present on the bottom board of each side. And this shows a fine line black outside of the yellow. Now if you watch close, you see I missed the shadow on the inside of the O, but I'll add that in. As I began to research the history behind the Hickory wagon, it looks like it was made by Piedmont Wagon Manufacturing in Hickory, North Carolina. In the center of each top board was this insignia, Locust, good for 100 years. At first I thought it was sloppy outlining around the sign for Locust, but then I began to realize it's a detailed picture of a hub. In the center of one of the end boards is also a sign of the seller, but the sold by is in a different position, so I'm going to sketch that out also. I'll include some of the top of the letters so I get it in the right position. So this records most of the lettering that I'll duplicate after it's painted. Thanks for watching.